Hey guys, tonight we open on the scrape of boots against a dusty road, the kind of road that remembers every traveler who ever dared to dream too loudly. A young man rides toward Paris with nothing but a stubborn horse, a letter of introduction, and a confidence so sharp it could cut steel. The air feels charged, like something important is about to go wrong, and it will. Quickly this. It's one of those stories where ambition walks into the city before wisdom does, and trust me, you probably won't survive this with your pride intact. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, drop your location and local time in the comments. There is something oddly comforting about knowing where in the world this story is drifting into sleepy ears. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The year is the early 17th century, a time when France wears silk on the surface and steel underneath. Kings smile while knives move in the background. Into this elegant danger rides Charles d'Artagnan, a Gascon teenager with more nerve than money. Gascony, by the way, is famous for producing excellent soldiers and absolutely unbearable confidence. Historians still argue whether this reputation was deserved, or simply loudly advertised by Gascons themselves. D'Artagnan believes Paris is waiting for him. The city, unfortunately, does not agree. His first stop is a roadside town where the locals size him up the way wolves size up a limping deer. His clothes are worn, his accent is thick, and his horse. Well, the horse looks like it has already given up on life. Almost immediately, laughter breaks out. Nobleman with refined manners and cruel eyes takes particular interest in mocking the young Gascon. Words are exchanged, insults sharpen, before D'Artagnan fully understands the rules of this new world. His precious letter of introduction is stolen right out from under him. This is important. That letter is his future. Without it, Paris is just a maze of closed doors and sharpened elbows. D'Artagnan explodes with fury, challenges the thief, and promptly learns his first Parisian lesson. Bravery does not protect you from humiliation. He is beaten, left bleeding, and forced to watch his enemy disappear down the road with a smile that promises this one to be their last meeting. A quirky historical detail, here dueling over insults, was so common in France at the time that entire generations of young men simply vanished. The crown officially banned duels, which of course made them even more popular. Bruised but unbroken, D'Artagnan reaches Paris anyway. The city rises before him like a living creature, breathing intrigue through narrow streets and shadowed courtyards. Somewhere inside this maze is the regiment of the King's Musketeers. Elite soldiers famous for bravery, loyalty, and a near-suicidal relationship with danger. Joining them is D'Artagnan's only goal. Hunger gnaws at him, pride keeps him upright, and fate, already amused, prepares the next blow. That blow arrives in the form of a collision, literally. Rounding a corner, D'Artagnan crashes into a tall man with cold eyes and an even colder demeanor. Apologies turn into accusations. A hand brushes a sword hilt. Another duel is scheduled because apparently that's how calendars work here. Moments later, he insults a second man, this one loud, flamboyant, and dressed like money itself. Duel number 2 is set. Then, in what can only be described as overachieving, he offends a third man, quiet and polished, with the air of someone who prays as often as he fights. Duel number 3. Same time, same place. This is either destiny or D'Artagnan has absolutely no survival instincts. The chosen meeting spot is secluded, elegant, and illegal. As D'Artagnan waits, sword trembling slightly in his grip, we learn a mainstream historical fact. Cardinal Richelieu, the real power behind the French throne, strictly forbade dueling to maintain control over the nobility. Breaking this rule could mean exile or worse. Yet swords continue to whisper out of scabbards across Paris because ambition has always been louder than law. The three men arrive. Their names are Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, and they are not just any gentlemen. They are musketeers legends in the making, already feared, admired, and quietly watched by the state. D'Artagnan realizes a bit late that he has challenged three of the king's finest soldiers in a single afternoon. This is the moment many lives end. He does not back down. Before steel can sing, guards appear, Cardinal's men. The atmosphere snaps tight. Musketeers and guards despise each other, not officially, but deeply. An open scholarly debate still lingers over whether this rivalry was fueled more by politics or pure masculine stubbornness. Probably both. In the chaos, something unexpected happens. D'Artagnan fights not well, not gracefully, but fiercely. He chooses loyalty over fear, standing with the musketeers against the guards. Blood spills, blades clash, and in that moment, alliances shift. By the time the dust settles, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis see something in this reckless Gascon. Courage without calculation. A dangerous trait, a valuable one. They retreat together. No duels today. Instead, something far rarer is born. A bond. As they walk away, Paris watches from its windows. Because in a city built on secrets, for men walking side by side can change history, D'Artagnan doesn't know it yet, but the letter he lost, the man who humiliated him, the alliances he's just formed are threads of the same tapestry. And somewhere far above street level, powerful eyes are already taking note. The night closes in, the city hums, and the first rule of Paris settles quietly into place. Nothing here is accidental. Morning arrives in Paris without apology. The city doesn't wake up. Gently it jolts into motion, shaking yesterday's dust off its shoulders and pretending nothing dangerous happened after sunset. For D'Artagnan, however, everything has changed. He wakes sore, broke, and smiling, which is usually a terrible sign for what comes next. Athos, Porthos, and Aramis do not suddenly become warm mentors. That would be unrealistic and frankly suspicious. Instead, they observe him the way veteran soldiers study a new blade, testing its balance, checking how easily it chips. Each musketeer represents a different version of manhood in 17th century France. Athos carries himself like a fallen noble, dignified even in poverty. Porthos shines with excess, too much lace, too much confidence, too much noise. Aramis balances between sword and scripture, forever undecided whether he belongs more to heaven or to war. Historians still argue whether Aramis truly wanted the church or simply liked the idea of escaping consequences. D'Artagnan wants only one thing: to become a musketeer. But desire alone doesn't pay for food, lodging, or sword maintenance. Paris, it turns out, is very expensive when you're poor and proud. He rents a miserable room, eats badly, and refuses help he desperately needs. Pride, especially Gascon pride, is an exhausting companion. The promised duels, technically, cannot be avoided forever. Honor has been insulted, and honor in this era is not an abstract concept. It's a public performance, a reputation currency. When the meeting is finally arranged again, there is tension in the air thick enough to taste. Not because they expect death, but because they expect witnesses. The four men gather in secret once more. This time, there are no interruptions, no guards, no convenient chaos. The swords come out. But before the first strike lands, something strange happens. Athos stops. He studies D'Artagnan, then the others. Instead of giving the signal to attack, he laughs. Quietly, bitterly. He calls off the duel. It's not mercy, it's recognition. Athos understands that killing this young man would gain them nothing, and losing him might cost them everything. Porthos, initially offended by the idea of restraint, eventually agrees. Aramis hesitates longest, murmuring something about fate and divine timing. The duel dissolves not into blood, but into conversation. With that conversation, the real foundation of their friendship begins. They drink together, not in celebration, more in exhaustion. Stories slip out, not full truths. Never that, but fragments. D'Artagnan listens more than he speaks, which surprises them. He learns that musketeers are not paid well, are often late paid, and survive largely on wit, reputation, and mutual loyalty, a quirky historical detail. Many royal soldiers of the time lived permanently in debt, using prestige as collateral. Paris functioned on credit and confidence. Their motto emerges organically, not as a declaration, but as a shared understanding. One for all, and all for one. It's not poetic yet. It's practical. Survival depends on unity, but unity is tested almost immediately. D'Artagnan, still searching for his stolen letter and dignity, crosses paths with the elegant nobleman from the road once more. The man moves through Paris like he owns it because, in many ways, he does. His name is the Comte de Rochefort, a trusted agent of Cardinal Richelieu himself, and he remembers D'Artagnan very clearly. Their exchange is brief, polite, dangerous. Rochefort offers no apology, only a smile that suggests an unfinished business. Historians still argue whether Rochefort truly underestimated D'Artagnan or whether he simply enjoyed planting enemies like seeds. Meanwhile, the musketeers face their own enemies. The cardinal's guards prowl the streets, looking for excuses. The rivalry between them is unofficial, but vicious. Everyone knows that Cardinal Richelieu, dressed in red impatience, is tightening his grip on France. He supports the king publicly while quietly controlling appointments, alliances, and secrets. A mainstream historical fact worth remembering: Richelieu effectively modernized the French state by centralizing power, making him both a nation builder and a feared manipulator. Conflict becomes inevitable. It erupts over something absurdly smaller question of precedence. A sneer, a hand resting too long near a sword. Suddenly steel flashes again. This time, there is no confusion about sides. Musketeers versus guards. D'Artagnan doesn't hesitate. He fights alongside them as if he's always belonged there. He is wounded. Yes, but he does not retreat. Pain, after all, is temporary. Cowardice lasts forever. They win barely. The aftermath is dangerous. Injuries are hidden. Stories are aligned. If the cardinal hears the wrong version of events, careers end, lives disappear. Athos takes control, issuing instructions with the authority of someone used to command even, if no one remembers when he lost the right. That night, something important happens quietly. D'Artagnan, is invited back, not as a guest, as one of them. But belonging has a cost. He is warned indirectly, gently, that loyalty to the Musketeers often means standing against power. That love, ambition, and politics are tangled together in Paris, and pulling one thread can unravel everything. An open scholarly debate lingers around whether the Musketeers were truly loyal to the king or loyal to each other first. The distinction matters more than it sounds. As days pass, D'Artagnan's world expands. He begins to understand that Paris is not ruled from the throne alone. It is ruled from salons, confessionals, shadowed corridors. And somewhere within those walls is a secret involving the queen herself, a secret whispered about, never spoken aloud. He doesn't know it yet, but his sword is about to be drawn into something far larger than personal honor. Something that could shame a crown, shift alliances, and pull for friends into the center of history's turning wheel. And Paris, always watching, smiles again, because brotherhood has been formed. And brotherhood in this city is the most dangerous weapon of all. Paris has a way of revealing people slowly, like a card game played by candlelight, where every hand is partially hidden, with D'Artagnan now woven into the daily rhythm of the Musketeers. The masks begin to slip not all at once, never cleanly, but enough to show what lies underneath. Athos is the first enigma. He lives with the manners of a nobleman and the income of a beggar. His clothes are plain, his voice calm, his authority unquestioned. When he speaks, the others listen. When he drinks, it's with a deliberate slowness that suggests he's not chasing pleasure, but silence. D'Artagnan notices the way Athos avoids talking about his past, how certain names cause a flicker behind his eyes. Quirky historical detail. Fallen nobles were common in post-war France. Men ruined by bad marriages, lost favor, or quiet scandals. Athos carries himself like one of them, but no one dares ask which disaster claimed him. Porthos, by contrast, is impossible to ignore. He dresses like a walking advertisement for success, all feathers, lace, and exaggerated confidence. His laughter fills rooms. His stories grow longer with every retelling. He speaks often of influential friends and powerful lovers, though historians still argue whether Porthos' wealth was real or simply projected loudly enough to make others believe it. What D'Artagnan learns quickly is that Porthos fears obscurity more than death. To be unnoticed would destroy him faster than any blade. Then there's Aramis, soft-spoken, impeccably groomed. He reads theology as comfortably as he wields a sword. His letters are written with care, sealed with precision and delivered discreetly. Women admire him. Priests tolerate him. Soldiers trust him, just not completely. Aramis lives between identities, and that tension follows him everywhere. An open scholarly debate still circles around whether Aramis's religious devotion is sincere or simply a refuge from the violence he understands too well. D'Artagnan absorbs all of this quietly. He learns when to speak, when to listen, and when to stand firm. His youth is still visible, but it's sharpening rather than dulling. The Musketeers begin to treat him less like a reckless tag-along and more like a younger brother who might someday surpass them. That thought is both encouraging and unsettling. Their lives settle into a dangerous routine. Days are filled with errands, debts, and small skirmishes with the Cardinal's guards. Nights bring wine, laughter, and confessions that stop just short of truth. Paris remains tense. Cardinal Richelieu's influence grows steadily, his spies embedded everywhere from taverns to confessionals. A mainstream historical fact, Richelieu pioneered a centralized intelligence network, using informants long before modern intelligence agencies existed. In Paris, privacy is a myth, and then comes the woman. Her name is Constance Bonacieux, and she enters D'Artagnan's life through coincidence, charm, and carefully controlled innocence. She is married, yes, but lonely, neglected, and more observant than she appears. She speaks softly, smiles politely, and listens closely. What D'Artagnan doesn't realize at first is that Constance serves the queen herself, acting as a discreet messenger within the palace. In a court ruled by appearances, discreet people hold the real power. Their connection deepens quickly. Too quickly. Love in this city rarely waits for permission. D'Artagnan finds himself drawn into whispers and half-explanations. Constance hints at danger, but avoids details. She asks for trust without offering proof. Foolishly or bravely, he gives it. Through her, he glimpses the fragile position of Queen Anne of Austria. The queen is beautiful, reserved, and surrounded by enemies who smile while counting her mistakes. Her marriage to King Louis XIII is political, distant, and cold. She stands isolated in a foreign court, watched relentlessly by Richelieu, who suspects her loyalty lies elsewhere. Historians still argue whether the Queen's actions were romantic desperation or a genuine political risk to France. The Musketeers sense trouble immediately. Love has a way of complicating loyalties. Athos warns D'Artagnan, indirectly, about secrets that consume those who carry them. Porthos jokes about romance as if it's a game. Aramis grows uncharacteristically serious, reminding them that affairs of the heart often end at the gallows. Meanwhile, Rochefort moves again, always present, always smiling. He shadows D'Artagnan's steps without making threats. The Cardinal, it seems, is aware of the young Gascon now. Attention from powerful men is rarely a compliment. Paris tightens around them. Letters are intercepted. Meetings are delayed. Rumors circulate about the Queen's private correspondence and a dangerous connection beyond French borders. D'Artagnan doesn't yet know the details, but he feels the tension rising like a storm gathering behind palace walls. By the time night falls again, it's clear that friendship has evolved into responsibility. Secrets are no longer theoretical. Love is no longer safe. And the Musketeers, for all their bravado, are standing closer to treason than ever before. Because once you glimpse the truth behind power, there's no pretending you didn't see it. The palace is quieter than it should be. It's not peaceful. It's just carefully silent. The kind of silence that exists because too many people are listening at once. D'Artagnan feels it the moment he crosses its threshold, guided by Constance through corridors polished by centuries of ambition. Every step echoes longer than it should. Every glance feels measured. This is not a place where accidents happen. This is a place where mistakes are recorded. Queen Anne of Austria lives at the center of this quiet tension. She is not weak, despite what her enemies whisper. She is simply surrounded. Her smile is practiced, her posture flawless, her words chosen with surgical care. In public, she is the perfect queen. In private, she is a woman balancing on the edge of disgrace. One wrong revelation, one intercepted letter, and her position collapses. The secret, though never spoken plainly, presses in from every side. The Queen has given her affection and her trust to the Duke of Buckingham. It's an English nobleman whose charm is matched only by the political danger he represents. France and England hover between rivalry and open hostility. Any suggestion of intimacy between their highest representatives would not just scandalize the court, could reshape alliances. Historians still argue whether Buckingham's devotion was sincere love or calculated provocation. Either way, the consequences are real. D'Artagnan is pulled deeper into this web than he ever intended. Constance confides in him not because he is powerful, but because he is brave and unconnected, or so she believes. He becomes a courier of glances, messages, and half-truths. Each favor seems small, each risk feels manageable, till suddenly they aren't. The cardinal knows something is wrong. Richelieu doesn't need proof to apply. Pressure suspicion is enough. He positions himself carefully, publicly loyal to the king, while privately tightening the noose around the queen's reputation. A mainstream historical fact, Richelieu viewed personal relationships as political tools and scandals as weapons. He doesn't attack directly, he waits. The trap is set during preparations for a grand royal ball. The queen is expected to appear wearing diamond pins given to her by the king himself, symbols of unity, fidelity, and royal harmony. What few know is that the queen, in a moment of trust or recklessness, has already given those pins to Buckingham as a token of affection. It is a small gesture with enormous implications. Richelieu arranges for the king to demand their appearance. Publicly, casually, with a smile that dares anyone to refuse. If the queen cannot produce them, her secret is exposed. England is implicated. Her honor is destroyed. The cardinal wins without lifting a finger. Panic spreads quietly through the queen's inner circle. Constance rushes to D'Artagnan with urgency stripped of pretense. There is no time for subtlety now. The pins must be retrieved from England before the ball. No one official can be trusted. No one visible can move freely. D'Artagnan volunteers before fear has time to argue. It's reckless. It's impossible. And it's exactly what the situation demands. The Musketeers are informed only after the decision is made. Athos closes his eyes when he hears the plan, as if calculating odds he doesn't like. Porthos laughs too loudly, masking concern. Aramis prays briefly, which is never a good sign. They argue, they warn, they protest, and then they prepare. Because loyalty once given is not withdrawn. They ride out under cover of routine business, scattering from Paris in different directions to avoid suspicion. The road to England is long, dangerous, and watched. Richelieu's agents move faster than official messengers, and Rochefort is already anticipating interference. An open scholarly debate still lingers over whether Richelieu expected the queen to Fleur, hoped she would struggle enough to reveal her network. Almost immediately, obstacles appear, broken saddle strap, an ambush disguised as bandits, a delayed ferry crossing. None of it feels accidental. One by one, the Musketeers are forced to stop behind, injured or detained, sacrificing progress so D'Artagnan can continue alone. Each farewell is abrupt. No speeches, just understanding. One for all for one, tested in silence. By the time D'Artagnan reaches the coast, he is exhausted, wounded, and running on urgency alone. He crosses the channel under miserable conditions, arriving in England barely standing. Buckingham receives him with surprise and admiration. The truth is confirmed. The pins are here, but not all of them. To have already been stolen? Part of Richelieu's deeper game. There's no time to recover them properly. Buckingham orders replacements made immediately, working through the night. Goldsmiths are bribed. Time is bent. History pauses, just barely. D'Artagnan rides back with dawn burning at his back and danger snapping at his heels. He arrives in Paris moments before the ball begins. Musketeers, battered but alive, regroup around him. No cheers, no relief, just one shared look. The Queen enters the ballroom wearing the diamonds. Richelieu watches, smiles, and realizes for the first time that he has underestimated a young Gascon with nothing left to lose. But the game is far from over. It has only learned its opponent. Victory in Paris is never loud. It arrives quietly, dressed as normality, pretending nothing unusual has happened. The ball ends with music, laughter, and polite applause, while beneath the polished floorboards, reputations bleed. The Queen survives the night, but survival is not the same as safety. Cardinal Richelieu does not rage. He does not accuse, simply recalculates. A man like Richelieu never loses. He only learns. His red robes move through the palace like a warning bell wrapped in silk. The failed trap sharpens his focus, narrowing his attention onto the small group of men who made it possible. The Musketeers are no longer colorful nuisances. They are obstacles. D'Artagnan feels the shift immediately. Doors that once opened slowly now hesitate. Conversations stop when he enters rooms. He has stepped into a larger arena, one where swords are only the final argument. A mainstream historical fact. Political survival in Richelieu's France depended less on bravery and more on anticipation. Being seen was often more dangerous than being wrong. Money becomes a problem again. Heroics don't pay rent. The Musketeers drift back into familiar poverty, surviving on favors and pride. Porthos attempts to maintain his lavish image despite empty pockets, borrowing extravagantly and repaying with charm. Athos grows quieter, retreating further into himself. Aramis, meanwhile, receives letters that unsettle him, reminders of paths he could still take, paths away from bloodshed. D'Artagnan clings to Constance. Their moments together are stolen, brief, and charged with fear. She warns him repeatedly. Richelieu watches everything. The Queen cannot protect them forever. And worse, someone new has entered the Cardinal's service, a woman whose name is spoken carefully, if at all. Milady. She arrives without announcement, as if Paris itself produced her. Beautiful, intelligent, and terrifyingly composed. Milady de Winter does not threaten openly. She persuades. She listens. She understands people's weaknesses before they do. A quirky historical detail. Women in intelligence networks of the era were often underestimated, making them dangerously effective. Milady thrives in that blind spot. She crosses paths with D'Artagnan by design, not chance. Their conversation is light, flirtatious, almost harmless. Almost. Behind every word is a test. D'Artagnan, young and still intoxicated by recent success, enjoys the attention without recognizing the trap forming beneath him. Historians still argue whether Milady saw him as a threat immediately or as a tool waiting to be sharpened. Richelieu sets his next move carefully. He assigns Milady to dismantle the Queen's remaining network from the inside. Arrests follow. Messengers vanish. Constance disappears from her lodgings one evening without explanation. Panic spreads through the Musketeers' circle. This time, there is no obvious challenge, no duel to fight. It's just absence. Athos reacts first. Cold. Focused. He recognizes Milady's methods with unsettling familiarity. His warnings become sharper, more urgent. Porthos wants action. Aramis urges caution. D'Artagnan demands answers. They get one too late. Constance is being moved under guard, isolated, hidden from allies. Richelieu intends to break the queen by removing her most loyal servant. Milady oversees the operation personally. Her efficiency is chilling. Oh, cruelty, no haste, just certainty. The Musketeers attempt a rescue, but timing betrays them. Constance is transferred again, always just beyond reach. Each failure tightens the noose. D'Artagnan's confidence fractures into desperation. Love, once his strength, now clouds his judgment. And Milady watches, always watching. She manipulates alliances with ease, turning friends into informants, offering mercy that never truly arrives. Her power doesn't come from force, but from inevitability. An open scholarly debate persists over whether Milady represents a historical archetype of political femme fatale, a moral warning shaped by fear of female autonomy. As pressure mounts, Athos makes a startling decision, reveals partially his connection to Milady, a past he buried violently. A marriage that ended in horror, crime that was never judged. His voice is steady as he speaks, but his hands tremble. Milady, it turns out, is not merely dangerous. She is personal. The revelation changes everything. This is no longer a political game alone. It is a reckoning delayed too long. Paris grows colder as alliances fracture. Richelieu advances unseen. And Milady, smiling softly, prepares her final moves, because for her, the board is already set. The Musketeers stand together again, battered and cornered. Knowing one truth now with painful clarity, the most dangerous enemy they face is not wearing armor. She's wearing a smile. Milady does not rush. She never has. She understands something most people don't, that fear ripens best when given time. While Paris churns with rumors of arrests and disappearances, she moves calmly through salons and corridors, dressed impeccably, speaking softly, leaving destruction behind her like perfume. For D'Artagnan, the danger becomes intimate. He encounters Milady again, under circumstances that feel almost accidental, too accidental. She speaks of loyalty, of betrayal, of how men in power use others like disposable pieces on a board. Her words land carefully, nudging doubts into his mind. She hints that Constance's loyalty to the queen may have doomed her. That devotion, however noble, rarely survives politics. It's a test. When D'Artagnan nearly fails, Milady's skill lies in reflection. She mirrors what people want to see. To D'Artagnan, she appears sympathetic, wounded by the cruelty of powerful men. To others, she is efficient, obedient, lethal. Historians still argue whether Milady truly believed in Richelieu's vision or simply enjoyed the freedom power granted her. Athos grows increasingly withdrawn. He watches Milady from a distance, recognizing patterns no one else can see. The way she pauses before answering, the way her gaze sharpens when she thinks she's unseen. To Athos, she is not a mystery. She is a ghost that refuses to stay buried. One night, pushed by equal parts suspicion and dread, Athos tells the full story. Years ago, before he was Athos, before the Musketeers, he was a nobleman who married a woman of extraordinary beauty and intelligence. She appeared perfect. Too perfect. One day he discovered the truth: she was branded, marked as a criminal for crimes she never fully explained. In a moment of fury and aristocratic certainty, he condemned her without trial, believing justice was his to administer. She survived. She escaped. and she transformed. The woman he buried became Milady. This revelation fractures the group. Porthos is stunned. Aramis is visibly shaken, murmuring about sin and consequence. D'Artagnan is horrified not just by Milady's past, but by Athos's. The line between victim and monster blurs uncomfortably. An open scholarly debate persists over whether Athos' act was justice by the standards of his time, more an unforgivable abuse of power. Milady, meanwhile, tightens her grip. She arranges for Constance to be moved again, this time farther from Paris, to a convent under cardinal protection. The location is secure, remote, official. Any rescue attempt would be considered open defiance of Richelieu himself. The message is clear: stop trying or suffer worse. D'Artagnan refuses to stop. Against Athos's warnings, he pursues Milady directly, driven by desperation rather than strategy. He confronts her under a false identity, attempting to extract information through charm and deception. For a moment, it works. Milady lets her guard down just enough. She speaks of revenge, of men who play gods and expect forgiveness. Then she notices something small. A gesture.
I am afraid.
Recognition flashes in her eyes. The trap snaps shut. Milady exposes D'Artagnan publicly, denouncing him as a traitor and spy. Only quick thinking and sheer luck save him from arrest. He escapes wounded, shaken, and finally aware that Milady has been playing a deeper game all along. He was never the hunter. He was bait. Richelieu approves of Milady's efficiency, gives her authority to act independently, trusting her judgment completely. A mainstream historical fact, Richelieu often relied on trusted agents to operate without oversight, believing centralized vision required decentralized execution. Milady thrives under this freedom. Athos insists the time for defense is over. Milady must be stopped, not arrested, not exposed, but ended. The suggestion hangs heavy in the air. Killing a woman, even a dangerous one, crosses lines that swords alone cannot redraw. Aramis struggles with the moral weight. Porthos worries about consequences. D'Artagnan thinks only of Constance. They decide to act. The Musketeers coordinate carefully, using old contacts, false trails, and quiet threats. They learn Milady's movements, her habits, her impatience. For the first time, she is no longer untouchable. She senses it too. The game accelerates. But Milady strikes first. She poisons an ally, someone close enough to remind the Musketeers that anyone can be reached. The death is silent, efficient, and devastating. No message is left. None is needed. Fear spreads through their circle like rot. Athos recognizes the tactic instantly. It's not revenge, it's control. D'Artagnan finally reaches Constance's location, but not in time. She is ill, weak, poisoned, slowly, carefully, by Milady's design. Their reunion is brief, painful, and unfinished. Constance dies quietly, her loyalty unrewarded by the world she served. The loss shatters D'Artagnan. Grief replaces recklessness with resolve. There is no confusion now, no doubt. Milady must be stopped, not for politics, not for honor, but because some evils, once unleashed, do not retreat on their own. As the Musketeers regroup, Paris continues its elegant routines, unaware that a private war is reaching its final stage. Richelieu remains untouchable. The Queen remains isolated, Milady, confident and calculating, prepares her escape. She believes she has one. She has no idea that judgment unofficial irreversible is already riding toward her. Grief has a strange way of sharpening time. For D'Artagnan, the days after Constance's death stretch and collapse at once. Moments blurring together until only one feeling remains: purpose. The reckless fire that once drove him has burned away, leaving something colder, steadier, far more dangerous. The Musketeers gather in silence. No wine, no jokes. Even Porthos, who usually fills emptiness with noise, sits heavy and still. Athos watches the candle flame, unmoving, as if measuring how long it takes before wax gives in to heat. Aramis fingers a rosary he pretends is only a habit, not a plea. They speak Milady's name aloud now. That alone marks a shift. Love, jealousy, and betrayal have braided themselves into something irreversible. Milady didn't just kill Constance, she proved that affection can be weaponized, that intimacy is often the most efficient poison. Historians still argue whether Milady acted out of personal vengeance or professional obedience. The answer matters less than the result. An innocent woman is dead, and the rules have changed. D'Artagnan wants immediate action. Athos slows him down. Not to protect Milady, but to make sure she cannot escape justice by slipping through cracks they fail to see. Athos knows her too well to rush. He explains how she survives. By turning people against each other, by ensuring no one trusts long enough to unite. If they move separately, they die separately. They begin to track her movements beyond Paris. Milady is preparing to leave France, her usefulness temporarily exhausted. Richelieu will not mourn her absence if it keeps his hands clean. A mainstream historical fact. Expendable agents were common in early modern power politics. Loyalty rarely outlived convenience. Milady travels under false names, always protected, always one step ahead. But grief has made the Musketeers patient. They use favors owed, debts remembered, and reputations whispered. Slowly, the net tightens. Along the way, temptation tests them. Porthos is offered wealth and protection in exchange for stepping aside. Aramis is approached with promises of absolution and advancement within the church. Even Athos is tempted not with reward, but with silence. Forget the past, forget the woman, forget the crime. Let history bury itself. They refuse. This is the moment their brotherhood proves real, not in battle, but in denial of escape. One for all for one is no longer a motto. It's a decision that costs them everything else. Milady senses pursuit. Charm sharpens into cruelty. She leaves misdirection behind her, manipulating locals, framing innocence, creating chaos to slow them down. Each delay risks exposure. Each mistake could hand them directly to Richelieu's justice instead of their own. An open scholarly debate still lingers over whether what follows is vengeance or necessity. The line is thin, and the Musketeers know it. They intercept Milady at last, near the coast, where land gives way to water and escape becomes possible. There is no dramatic confrontation, no confession, just recognition. Milady understands immediately that the game has ended. She fights not with weapons, but with words, accusations, memories, moral traps, aimed directly at Athos. He listens. Then he turns away. The trial that follows is quiet, unofficial, and absolute. Witnesses are gathered, men wronged, families destroyed, truths unearthed too late. Milady is condemned not by law, but by consequence. Aramis prays. Porthos looks away. D'Artagnan does not. Milady dies knowing she has been understood. That may be her final victory or her final punishment. Historians still argue whether her execution restores moral balance or exposes its absence entirely. When it's done, there is no relief, only exhaustion. The Musketeers ride back toward Paris changed. Love has been lost, innocence stripped away. Betrayal answered with finality. And Richelieu remains untouched, watching from a distance as his most dangerous loose end disappears. The private war is over, but the cost will echo longer than any victory. Long after the ballroom empties, the echo of that night refuses to fade. The diamond pins glittering on the queen's dress were never just jewelry. They were proof that loyalty can outrun power, that courage can slip through traps designed by geniuses. And now, days later, Paris pretends it never held its breath at all. But the consequences are everywhere. D'Artagnan feels them first. His name circulates quietly, never praised aloud, never condemned directly. He is noticed. And in Richelieu's France, being noticed is a dangerous intermediate state, somewhere between favor and elimination. A mainstream historical fact, political figures of the time rarely destroyed opponents immediately. They waited, observed, and learned how best to apply pressure later. The Musketeers understand this instinctively. The diamond affair has shifted the balance. They didn't just save the Queen's honor, they exposed a weakness in Richelieu's control. That kind of exposure is never forgiven. Athos warns them that what saved them once will not save them again. The Cardinal adapts. He always does. Porthos jokes about retirement, about living comfortably somewhere far away, but his laughter rings hollow. Aramis grows more distant, increasingly drawn to letters and thoughts that promise a quieter life. The diamond gamble has forced each of them to confront something uncomfortable. Survival cannot always be purchased with bravery. For the Queen, safety remains temporary. She thanks her defenders discreetly, carefully. Gratitude itself can be dangerous. Historians still argue whether Queen Anne truly trusted the Musketeers, simply used them as necessary instruments in a hostile court. Either way, she retreats further behind formality, sealing herself off emotionally to reduce risk. Constance, still alive at this moment in time, senses the shift as well. Her role becomes heavier, her movements more restricted. She understands that success has painted a target on everyone involved. Joy for her is cautious now, measured in minutes rather than dreams. She urges D'Artagnan to be careful, to avoid attention. He listens, but only partially. Youth rarely learns until loss demands it. Richelieu responds subtly. He does not punish. He rearranges. Assignments change. Funding dries up. Old allies are transferred or promoted away. The Musketeers find themselves stretched thin, isolated without being officially removed. Poverty creeps back in, not as misfortune, but as policy. A quirky historical detail, financial pressure was one of Richelieu's preferred tools. By starving opponents of resources, he forced dependence or collapse without ever signing an execution order. The Musketeers feel the squeeze immediately. D'Artagnan struggles most. He tasted victory aerial. Victory and now must accept that triumph doesn't last. His pride chafes under enforced patience. He wants action, clarity, forward motion. Paris offers none of it, only waiting. And waiting in this city is never passive. Whispers circulate about England, about Buckingham's reaction to the near exposure. Some claim he laughed it off. Others suggest the incident hardened political tensions further. An open scholarly debate remains over whether the diamond affair meaningfully impacted Anglo-French relations or simply intensified personal rivalries already in motion. For the Musketeers, the gamble's legacy becomes internal. Trust deepens, but so does fear. They now know the cost of failure. They've seen how close disgrace comes, how thin the margin between elegance and execution truly is. Athos drinks more, not recklessly, intentionally, as if trying to blur memories that refuse to dull. Porthos doubles down on appearances, clinging to extravagance as armor. Aramis prays longer, questioning paths not taken. And D'Artagnan hardens. He begins to understand that heroism in Paris is temporary, but consequences are permanent. The diamond pins return to their box. The queen resumes her role. The king smiles, unaware or uninterested in how close humiliation came. Life continues. That's the most unsettling part. Because nothing feels resolved. The Musketeers move forward knowing that the greatest gamble they ever won has made the next one far more dangerous. Richelieu hasn't lost, he has learned. And when a man like that learns, the lesson is always paid for later. Paris exhales, quietly, and somewhere in that calm, the next storm begins to gather. Paris does not mourn quietly, but it forgets efficiently.
After Constance's death,
The city absorbs the loss, the way it absorbs everything else, by moving on. Doors reopen, carriages roll. Laughter returns to salons, as if nothing fragile has been broken. For those left behind, the contrast is unbearable. D'Artagnan feels it most sharply. Grief has settled into him like a second spine, holding him upright when exhaustion should have folded him in half. The city that once promised glory now offers only endurance. His room feels smaller, his meals grow simpler, his dreams narrow. It's not the poverty of ambition anymore. It's the poverty of consequence. The Musketeers are scattered, not by open decree, but by quiet design. Richelieu doesn't exile them formally. That would draw attention. Instead, he applies distance. Athos is sent away on temporary duty. Porthos's financial backers evaporate overnight. Aramis receives renewed encouragement from religious authorities who suddenly remember his name. D'Artagnan finds himself without assignments, without direction, and without protection. A mainstream historical fact settles heavily here. Exile in early modern France often came disguised as service, where men were sent away for the good of the crown only to be forgotten, impoverished, or quietly neutralized. Pride was expected to do the rest. Athos accepts his separation with practiced calm. He has lost more than rank before. He warns D'Artagnan not to mistake silence for safety. When power stops speaking, his eyes seem to say, "It's listening." Porthos struggles the most visibly. His carefully maintained image collapses under debt. Tailors demand payment, taverns turn cold. The man who once glittered now negotiates for credit. Yet even now, he refuses to surrender style. He would rather starve extravagantly than survive plainly. Historians still argue whether Porthos's vanity was weakness or defiance in its purest form. Aramis drifts closer to the church. Not in surrender exactly, but in exploration. He attends meetings, he listens, he considers. The violence of recent months has shaken him. The idea of order, moral, spiritual, hierarchical, tempts him in ways the sword no longer does. An open scholarly debate lingers over whether Aramis's faith deepens here, or whether it simply offers shelter from unbearable choice. D'Artagnan remains in Paris alone. Without the Musketeers' constant presence, the city feels sharper, more hostile. Old enemies recognize opportunity. New ones test him. He is challenged, insulted, watched. His name still carries weight, but not protection. Pride keeps him from retreating. Hunger keeps him moving. And yet something unexpected happens. He learns restraint. The reckless Gascon who once collided into Duels head first now calculates. He listens before speaking. He remembers Athos's warnings, Aramis's hesitations, even Porthos's absurd confidence. Loss has taught him what no mentor could. Survival is a skill, not a gift. Richelieu notices, not directly, never directly. But small opportunities appear tiny tests of loyalty. Information offered. Minor favors suggested. Nothing incriminating. Nothing binding. D'Artagnan refuses them all, politely, consistently. He will not trade one chain for another. This refusal costs him. Poverty deepens. Isolation grows heavier. But pride, properly disciplined, becomes armor. A quirky historical detail. Many successful figures of the era spent long periods in obscurity, learning patience before re-emerging stronger. Paris, cruel as it is, occasionally rewards endurance. Letters arrive sporadically from his friends. Athos writes rarely, but meaningfully. Porthos writes often, exaggeratedly, insisting everything is nearly resolved. Aramis's letters are careful, thoughtful, and increasingly formal. The brotherhood still exists, but distance strains it. Then war begins to rumble again. France's conflicts with England and internal unrest demand experienced soldiers. Musketeers are suddenly useful once more. Assignments reopen. Lists are revised. Names reconsidered. Richelieu does not forgive, but he does exploit. D'Artagnan is offered a chance to return to service. Not advancement, not reward. Simply relevance. He accepts. Because pride, when refined by suffering, no longer seeks applause. It seeks purpose. The Musketeers begin to converge again, not triumphantly, but cautiously. Each returns changed. Each carries invisible scars. There is no celebration, only recognition. They have survived exile, poverty, and humiliation without turning on each other. In Paris, that alone is rare. But nothing is restored to how it was. Innocence does not return with rank. Loss does not dissolve with reunion. They move forward understanding that friendship is not protection, it is responsibility. And somewhere above them, Richelieu continues to watch, satisfied. Not because they are broken, but because they are useful again. Paris closes its grip gently. The game resumes. Some secrets don't stay buried. They wait. Patient. Pressed beneath years of silence, they soften the ground above them until one careless step brings everything back to the surface. For Athos, that step comes without warning. Paris is shifting against lowly, subtly as wars redraw priorities and old vendettas resurface under new names. The Musketeers are back in service. Not celebrated, not trusted, but tolerated. It's in this uneasy balance that whispers begin to circle Athos's name. Not loudly, it's not publicly, just enough to be dangerous. It starts with a rumor about a woman, a foreigner. Her name barely remembered, but her crimes, suddenly, are being re-examined. Milady D'Artagnan hears it first, passed along as tavern gossip. Someone claims she wasn't just an agent, that she had once been a noblewoman, that her death left unresolved questions about jurisdiction, authority, and a missing record from years ago involving a young count and a secret marriage. The story is fractured, unreliable, but one detail slices cleanly through the noise: a brand. Athos goes still when he hears it. The room seems to dim around him, as if memory itself has weight. Brands were not uncommon punishments in earlier decades, especially for crimes like theft or fraud. A fleur-de-lis burned into the skin marked a person permanently, legally reduced them to suspicion forever. Athos believed he ended that story long ago. He believed his judgment had closed the account. He was wrong. Historians still argue whether Milady manipulated every narrative around her, or whether the world simply refused to see complexity in a woman who refused submission. Either way, the truth is no longer dormant. It's restless. Rochefort reappears. Not dramatically. Just present again, polite, curious. He visits Athos under the pretense of official clarification. The cardinal's office, he explains, is tying up loose ends. Milady's death raised questions. Some records don't align. Some testimonies conflict. And Athos inconveniently sits at the center of those discrepancies. Rochefort doesn't accuse, he probes. Athos answers carefully, truth wrapped in restraint. He does not deny the marriage. He does not justify the execution. He acknowledges the act as a failure of judgment, of mercy, of authority. What he refuses to do is apologize for surviving it. This unsettles Rochefort more than denial would have. A mainstream historical fact hovers here uncomfortably. Aristocrats often exercised extrajudicial power over dependents and spouses, particularly in rural provinces. It was legal enough to be ignored, and politics demanded otherwise. Politics always demands otherwise eventually. Rochefort leaves without resolution, which is worse than leaving with threats. The Musketeers regrouped that night, tension thick between them. D'Artagnan is furious not at Athos, but at the past for refusing to stay past. Porthos demands action, certain this is another trap meant to divide them. Aramis listens quietly, understanding that this reckoning is not political, it's moral. Athos speaks plainly. He admits that Milady was guilty of crimes, but not the ones that defined her end. That his choice to judge her came from pride, not justice. That he believed killing her would erase the damage she represented. Instead, it taught her how to become something worse. Silence follows. An open scholarly debate still lingers around whether Athos's act created Milady or merely failed to stop her early. The truth, as always, is untidy. The danger now is exposure, not legal execution. Richelieu has no interest in reopening that but leverage. Secrets are valuable currency. If Athos can be destabilized, the Musketeers weaken. If the Musketeers weaken, the Queen loses quiet protection. The chain is clear. D'Artagnan suggests flight. Athos refuses. Running would confirm guilt. Porthos suggests bribery. Aramis warns against it. In the end, they choose the only path that has ever worked for them: endurance through unity. They counter rumor with presence. Athos appears openly, unapologetic. He performs his duties flawlessly, gives Rochefort nothing to sharpen. The Musketeers close ranks visibly, making it clear that touching one means confronting all four. One for all for one. No longer idealism, but deterrence, Richelieu observes. He understands exactly what Athos represents, a man who has already lost everything once and survived. Such men are unpredictable, dangerous, and paradoxically, loyal in ways that cannot be bought. So Richelieu does what he does best, lets the matter fade. It's not resolved, not forgiven, simply postponed. Because postponed justice retains its value longer, the rumors die down. The brand returns to silence, but Athos is changed again, lighter, in an odd way, as if acknowledging the truth even too late loosens its grip. He drinks less, speaks more, watches D'Artagnan, with something like pride rather than concern, because the young Gascon is no longer young. He has seen love weaponized, loyalty punished, secrets resurrected, and still he stands. Ace shifts once more, closing over old scars without healing them. The Musketeers continue forward, aware now that the past is not behind them yet, is simply waiting for the right moment to knock. And when it does, they will answer together. War has a way of simplifying things, not morally never, that but structurally. When cannons begin to speak, whispers lose their power. When borders ignite, secrets wait their turn. For the Musketeers, the shift is almost a relief. At last, the danger is visible. France moves toward open conflict along the coast. England looms again, not just as a rival court, but as a military reality. Orders arrive, stamped, sealed, unquestionable. The Musketeers are sent away from Paris toward fortifications and salt-heavy air, where the horizon is always watching back. A mainstream historical fact grounds the moment. The siege warfare of the early 17th century was slow, brutal, and as much about starvation and patience as swordplay. For D'Artagnan, the march feels like forward motion at last, not ambition clarity. War strips away ambiguity. You know where you stand because the enemy is standing opposite you. Athos leads with calm authority, respected by officers who sense depth without needing explanation. Porthos thrives in the physicality of it all, lifting morale through sheer presence and stubborn optimism. Aramis grows quieter, introspective, writing less, praying more, and D'Artagnan learns restraint under fire. The coast is harsh. Wind cuts through armor. Supplies run thin. The enemy presses from fortified positions, forcing the French into drawn-out maneuvers. Skirmishes break out unexpectedly, claiming men whose names were known hours earlier. A quirky historical detail. Soldiers often slept fully armed during sieges, never fully resting, never fully waking. When one such skirmish, the illusion of invincibility shatters. An ambush unfolds quickly, too quickly. Smoke, shouting, chaos. The Musketeers fight as they always have, back to back, instinctively aligned. But war doesn't respect reputation. Blade slips past guard. A musket fires blind. Athos falls, not dramatically. No final words, just sudden weight, blood darkening the sand. The world narrows violently for D'Artagnan as he drops beside him, hands uselessly pressing where life is already leaving. Athos meets his eyes once clear, calm, almost relieved. There is no fear there, only acceptance. He dies as he lived, quietly, with dignity. The retreat sounds, the enemy pulls back. Victory is declared tactically, but no one celebrates. Porthos stands frozen, disbelief replacing bravado. Aramis kneels, whispering prayers that arrive too late. Out D'Artagnan feels something break, not loudly, but permanent. Historians still argue whether Athos's death changed the Musketeers more than any political betrayal ever could. Loss, unlike power, leaves nothing to negotiate with. The days that follow blur. Athos is buried near the coast, marked simply. No speeches, no honors beyond what those present remember. War continues because it always does. But something essential has been removed. Porthos becomes reckless, charging harder, laughing louder as if daring fate to finish the job. Aramis withdraws further inward, the church's pull now undeniable. And D'Artagnan steps forward, not because he wants to, but because someone must. Leadership settles on him unexpectedly. Orders followed. Decisions made. He hates the weight of Itan, carries it anyway. This is the final lesson Athos leaves behind. Courage is not enthusiasm. It's responsibility accepted without applause. As the campaign grinds on, rumors reach them that Richelieu has already adapted. New favorites, new alliances. Athos's death barely registers beyond the regiment. That is the quiet cruelty of history. It absorbs heroes without comment. When the fighting finally eases, the Musketeers are fewer, harder, older. Victory tastes thin. They return to Ward. Paris changed again, carrying memories heavier than equipment. D'Artagnan looks back at the coastline once, knowing that part of himself remains buried there. The boy who arrived in Paris chasing glory is gone. In his place stands a man shaped by friendship, loss, and choices that cannot be undone. War gave him clarity. It also took everything else. Paris receives them without ceremony. There are no crowds for returning soldiers unless they bring decisive victory, and this campaign brought only survival. The city's gates open, close, and forget. Names are checked, faces pass. Athos's absence goes unnoticed by everyone except those who feel it like a missing limb. D'Artagnan walks the streets differently now. He no longer scans rooftops for threats or taverns for opportunity. He observes people instead, how they rush, how they avoid eye contact, how ambition leaks through posture more than speech. Paris has resumed its performance, and he finally understands the script. Porthos spends his days loudly, eats, drinks, boasts, and trains as if noise itself might drown memory. Yet at night, when bravado no longer has an audience, he avoids Athos's old haunts. Strength has limits. Avoidance is one of them. Aramis does not return immediately. Word comes that he has taken extended leave under ecclesiastical protection. Not vows yet, but distance. The sword has stopped answering his questions, and he suspects the church might. A well-established historical pattern appears here. Many soldiers of the era turn toward religion after prolonged exposure to war, not out of fear, but from moral exhaustion. D'Artagnan resumes service quietly. No promotions, no medals, just work. He is useful now in ways that don't require acknowledgement. Discretion, judgment, silence. These are currencies. Paris respects. Richelieu summons him. Not publicly. Never publicly. The meeting is brief, polite, civil. The cardinal speaks of stability, of threats to the crown, of the need for men who understand loyalty without sentiment. He offers no apology for the past. He doesn't need to. Power does not explain itself at tests. D'Artagnan listens, answers carefully, commits to nothing beyond duty to France. Richelieu studies him with mild interest, like a craftsman evaluating a tool that has survived stress without breaking. "You have lost much," the cardinal observes. "Yes," D'Artagnan replies. "So I know the cost." That answer satisfies him. D'Artagnan understands now that survival in this city is not about choosing the right side. It's about choosing the right distance. Time passes slowly, purposefully. Porthos's fortunes improve modestly through marriage into wealth, less romance than practicality. He is content in his way. Aramis writes once more, informing D'Artagnan that he has chosen the church fully this time, not as escape, but as strategy. Faith for him is no longer a contradiction to ambition, it's a refinement of it. And D'Artagnan remains. Years will later paint him as legend. Paintings will show bravado, youth, flashing blades. None will capture this version of him, the man who learned that loyalty is fragile, that institutions outlast individuals, and that honor is not preserved by recognition, but by repetition. He still carries Athos's memory not as grief, but as standard. When tempted by shortcuts, he remembers calm eyes on a blood-stained shore. When offered advancement at moral discount, he refuses politely. Paris never notices this restraint. History almost doesn't either. But stability is built on men like him, those who do not demand credit, who do not seek revenge, who endure. The Musketeers' story, stripped of romance, becomes something rarer, a study in persistence. D'Artagnan stands one evening on a bridge over the Seine, watching the city reflect itself imperfectly in the water. He understands now that legends are not born from triumph. They are carved from what remains after loss. And Paris, indifferent as ever, continues to flow. Rumors travel faster than truth in Paris, and one of them claims Athos is dead. It is convenient. It explains his absence, softens questions. It allows the city to move on without accountability. But like most convenient lies, it collapses the moment it meets reality. Athos lives. He has simply stepped out of sight, retreating not from danger, but from people. When he finally reappears, thinner, quieter, unmistakably unchanged, the relief among the remaining three is wordless. No embraces, no speeches. Just the calm understanding that something unfinished has followed them home. Because Milady is not finished. She never is. Even stripped of official protection, even abandoned by Richelieu once her usefulness expires. She continues moving through servants, convent walls, borrowed names, borrowed grief. She survives on the oldest fuel of all, other people's trust. Historians still argue whether Milady acts from vengeance or instinct. Some describe her as a product of cruelty, others as its architect. The truth, as always, resists simplicity. She does not merely react, she designs. Her final design is delicate. She learns where Constance has been hidden. A convent, quiet, safe. A place built to protect innocence through isolation. It is the perfect cover. No guards, no suspicion. Only routine and belief. Milady arrives disguised as sorrow. She plays the role flawlessly. Another woman harmed by men, seeking refuge from the world's noise. The sisters accept her without hesitation. Even Constance, fragile but hopeful, lowers her defenses. Trust is offered freely where danger is not expected. The poison is subtle, not the theatrical kind. No immediate collapse, no obvious violence. Just time measured, patient, inevitable. By the time symptoms appear, Milady is gone. By the time help is summoned, it is already too late. Constance dies quietly. Her death does not echo through Paris. It barely whispers. But to D'Artagnan, it lands with devastating precision. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just final. This is Milady's mastery. She does not seek attention. She seeks erasure. When the truth surfaces, the reaction is immediate and restrained. There will be no appeals to Richelieu. No courts, no formal warrants. Milady exists precisely between legal definitions. She is too dangerous to be tried and too clever to be forgiven. So the four decide, not quickly, not lightly. Athos speaks last, as always. His authority comes not from volume, but from certainty. He knows Milady's history, knows it too well. Knows the identity she buried long ago. Knows that mercy extended here would not end violence, only delay it. They pursue her across borders, through inns and ports and false leads. A grim fact of 17th century Europe becomes relevant here. Extradition barely exists. Justice, when it happens at all, happens privately. Milady senses them eventually. She always does. But this time, there is no cardinal behind her, no institution shielding her escape. She attempts manipulation, first pity, then fear, then rage. Each fails. When words no longer work, she bargains. Athos does not respond. They bring her to a place outside cities, outside witnesses, not a dungeon, not a palace, somewhere history will not look closely. An executioner waits one with his own reasons, his own scars. Milady recognizes him. Recognition flashes, then hardens into defiance. Even now, she does not beg. She accuses, she reframes, she claims injustice. And perhaps in another life, another world, she might be right. The line between victim and villain blurs when cruelty multiplies, but choices still count. Her execution is swift, unceremonious, devoid of spectacle. No crowd, no proclamation, just consequence. Afterward, none of them speak. They leave separately, carrying different weights. D'Artagnan carries loss. Porthos carries unease. Aramis carries doubt. Athos carries something heavier, relief complicated by regret. Milady's death does not heal what she broke. It merely stops the damage from spreading. Paris never hears the full story. It never will. Official records reduce her to a footnote, a traitor, criminal. A woman erased by ink, but in quiet moments, among those who survived her, her presence lingers not as fear, but as warning. That brilliance without conscience is catastrophe. That charm without restraint is poison. And that some wars end not with victory, but with silence. The Musketeers understand now that survival has changed them permanently. They no longer believe that courage alone is enough. They no longer mistake loyalty for simplicity. Milady's final game is over. The cost remains. Justice, when stripped of ceremony, leaves an aftertaste. The four do not celebrate Milady's death. There is no relief dramatic enough to justify what they have done, no triumph loud enough to silence the questions that follow them back to Paris. They return not as heroes, but as men carrying a shared secret that refuses to lighten with time. Because this justice was never sanctioned. It did not wear a robe. It did not arrive with seals or signatures. It happened because the law could not move fast enough, and because waiting would have meant more graves. That argument sounds convincing until it echoes too often in the mind. Athos withdraws first. Not physically, emotionally. The others notice it in the pauses before he speaks, in the way his gaze lingers on nothing at all. He has closed a chapter that began long before the Musketeers existed, and the closure feels less like resolution and more like exhaustion. Historians still argue whether Athos represents moral clarity or moral failure. Some see a man correcting a wrong the law refused to touch. Others see a nobleman taking authority that did not belong to him. The debate remains unresolved, largely because Athos himself never defends his choice. He simply lives with it. Porthos struggles differently. He wants absolution through normalcy, fists, laughter, domestic plans. He speaks often of future comforts, as if prosperity might dilute memory. It is a common response among veterans of violence. Replace reflection with noise. Replace guilt with appetite. Aramis, however, cannot escape inward. The execution unsettles him deeply. He has already begun his retreat toward the church, and this act accelerates it. Not because he believes they were wrong, but because he realizes how easily he agreed. How calmly he accepted a solution that bypassed mercy entirely. That frightens him more than Milady ever did. D'Artagnan watches all of this quietly. He has grown accustomed to being the observer, the one who absorbs consequences without demanding center stage. Yet even he feels the shift. Something essential has been crossed. A line once theoretical is now personal. He understands now that loyalty can demand acts that permanently alter the self. Paris remains unchanged. That perhaps is the cruelest detail. The city does not pause. Markets open. Courtiers gossip. Power continues trading favors in corridors scented with incense and ambition. No one asks how justice was achieved, only whether the problem has stopped. And it has. Richelieu never mentions Milady again. Her usefulness ended the moment she became uncontrollable. This silence confirms what the Musketeers already suspected. They were never meant to survive her orbit unmarked. D'Artagnan receives advancement soon after. Not extravagant, not public, but undeniable. He is now trusted with tasks that require judgment beyond obedience. This reflects a broader historical reality of the time. Monarchies valued effectiveness over morality, especially when outcomes remain discreet. He accepts, not because he believes the system is just, but because stepping away would surrender influence entirely. Change, he understands now, does not come from purity, it comes from proximity. Athos eventually leaves Paris, not in disgrace, not in pursuit. He simply fades into the countryside, reclaiming land, silence, and anonymity. Legends will later claim he died young. Others will insist he lived long enough to forget everything. Neither is fully true. The bond between the four weakens not through betrayal but through divergence. Shared trauma does not guarantee shared futures. They write less, meet rarely, remember selectively, yet the motto remains. All for one and one for all. It no longer sounds like a promise. It sounds like a warning. Because unity, once weaponized, cannot be undone. The Musketeers' greatest victory was never defeating enemies. It was surviving themselves afterward. Learning how to exist without constant conflict. Learning that courage, when unchecked, becomes arrogance. Justice outside the law solves problems. It also creates ghosts. Those ghosts follow quietly. They sit beside empty chairs. They surface in moments of hesitation. They whisper whenever certainty feels too easy. The Musketeers listen now. That may be their final act of growth. Time finishes what swords cannot. Years pass, and the sharp edges of memory begin to soften, not because the past becomes kinder, but because the present demands attention. France moves forward under the same crown, the same intrigues, the same invisible hands guiding visible events. The Musketeers, once inseparable, now exist as echoes of one another in different corners of life. D'Artagnan rises, not suddenly, not dramatically. His ascent is steady, earned through patience rather than spectacle. He becomes known not for recklessness, but for reliability. Commands are given to him because he completes them without noise. Loyalty, once his youthful fire, has matured into discipline. Historians still argue whether D'Artagnan's greatness lies in his bravery or his restraint. Some claim he learned to play the game of power. Others insist he never stopped believing in honor. He simply learned how to protect it quietly. Both may be true. Porthos thrives in comfort. Wealth suits him, tells stories often, embellishing them generously. In his version, battles are louder, victories clearer, losses less personal. This, too, is survival. To remember selectively is sometimes the only way to move forward. Aramis becomes something else entirely. The church embraces him, not as a saint, but as a strategist. He understands institutions now, their weaknesses, their rhythms, their hypocrisies. Faith and ambition no longer conflict for him. They cooperate. His prayers are thoughtful, his politics precise. And Athos. Athos becomes legend by absence. Those who meet him later speak of a man calm beyond age, carrying dignity like a shadow. He does not speak of Paris. He does not speak of Milady. He speaks of land, weather, horses, books. But sometimes, late at night, he stares into fire, as if waiting for something to answer back. The Musketeers meet once more. No fanfare, no uniforms, just four men older than the world remembers them. They drink quietly, laugh briefly, fall silent easily. Nothing needs explaining. Everything has already been understood. They do not toast victories. They toast endurance. Because survival, they now know, is the rarest outcome of all. The phrase that once defined them feels distant now, softened by time, but not erased. All for one, and one for all. It no longer promises glory. It acknowledges cost. That devotion binds people tightly, but it also drags them through consequences together. Paris continues, indifferent and eternal. New heroes rise, new scandals bloom. The old stories fade into romance, stripped of blood and hesitation. Paintings replace truth. Plays simplify pain. But somewhere beneath the performance, the real legacy remains. That courage without reflection is dangerous. Loyalty without judgment is blind. And that growing up often means learning when not to draw the sword. D'Artagnan walks the city one last time in memory, no longer chasing anything. He has become what he once admired, steady, principled, imperfect. A man shaped not by triumph, but by what he chose to carry forward. The night settles gently now. The noise of Paris dulls into distance. Past loosens its grip. Breathing slows. Thoughts stretch out, unhurried. The story does not end sharply. It exhales. Swords are returned to their places. Voices lower. Candles burn down to quiet stubs of light. And somewhere between legend and truth, the Musketeers finally rest not forgotten, but finished. Now, let the city sleep. Let the past stay where it belongs, and let the silence do the rest.